Glad to be with you here on this Wednesday. And if you're like me, it's just a continual up and down response to all the news we keep hearing. What do we believe? What is really going on? And most Christians are getting increasingly frustrated with the whole approach to the COVID-19 situation. And as we see churches shut down again and all the different things occurring, it can really begin to eat away at us, and we can get frustrated. The same thing with the turmoil in our country, and there's so much involved there. The philosophical worldview clash, and we're just shocked at some of the things that we hear and some of the things that are happening, and we see the whole push towards socialism. All of this is very concerning. And we can certainly relate to David as he was constantly struggling with those that were opposing him. We read in verse 3 of chapter 14 of Psalms, that was yesterday's reading, "They are all gone aside, they are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one." We have had revealed for us in all of these different issues the fact that man is exactly what God said man is. We're all selfish, we're all sinners, and when people don't know the Lord, and there isn't the boundary as we've had of Judeo-Christian fences, so to speak, and protections, we're beginning to see the illogic of the human mind. When a person is darkened by Satan to truth and does not have the picture of life from God's perspective, there's going to be a totally different take. And for us as believers, it's very easy for us to just get discouraged, angry, frustrated. I've talked about this before. So I want to encourage you today that you've got to do what David did. Long for the salvation of the Lord, and realize that this is really good for us today as believers. We've been in a little cocoon. We have lived in a culture that has come out of a Judeo-Christian background, some of the great revivals, and it's taken decades to lose all of that, but now we're a pagan, secular society. And we can't afford to drift along in our Christian life. And if all we look at is how all of this thinking is making it difficult for us, then we're going to miss the whole point. No, we're seeing the Bible come alive. We're seeing what God says about man to be true. We're seeing prophecy able to be fulfilled very easily. And so our hearts need to be stirred, and we need to realize we are in a battle for the souls of men. If it weren't for Christ, we'd think the same way ourselves. The Word of God has changed our minds. We don't need to be critical. We don't need to be frustrated. We need to be burdened. We need to have the same heart God has toward this world. He hates the sin, but he loves the sinner. He is deeply frustrated by what Satan is doing, and yet there is deep compassion for every person who is lost. And so we as believers have got to be very careful not to allow ourselves to have a wrong attitude at this point. I know I've said this several times, but I think it's very important because it's just wave after wave of things that to the Christian mind just seem so incredible. How can this be? How can people think this way? How can decisions be made like they're being made? Well, we got to understand, man's just being man. Without God, we just think from a totally different perspective. Our paradigm's wrong. And so we need to thank God we're saved. We need to thank God that we can think right. We need to be very humble about that. It's totally by God's grace. And oh, I trust we won't react and put ourselves in our own little enclosure, but instead open the gates to the rest of the world that need the gospel and allow the Spirit of God to give us love, give us discernment, yes, but give us love. And today, we need to endeavor to be a blessing to someone. Don't wallow around in our frustration, but instead let's let God make us his servant for good today.